Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So our listeners sent in a fantastic stack of research, and it all really boils down to one question. If exercise is good for the brain, how do we get specific? How do we optimize our workouts for, particular cognitive goals?
Right.
So our mission today is get way beyond that general advice of, just move more. We're going to analyze 3 very distinct training styles: aerobic, HIIT, and resistance training, and look at the unique, targeted benefits each one offers your brain.
And that's the crucial distinction, isn't it? We have to start treating the body like a precision machine.
Right.
The input, so the type of exercise you do, directly dictates the output, which is the specific cognitive gain.
Okay.
And the core idea coming out of all these sources is that your muscle, it's not just an engine to move you around, it acts as this incredibly powerful endocrine organ.
Got an endocrine organ.
Yes, it's actively talking to your brain. It releases these signaling factors, these neurotrophins, what we call myokines.
So muscle isn't just moving the body, it's actually directing the brain.
It's directing the brain.
That's what we're going to unpack today. We'll distill the evidence and show exactly how each type of exercise hits these critical markers, things like BDNF, inflammation, metabolic health. By the end, you should have a blueprint for tailoring your training, whether your goal is memory, focus, or executive function.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the big one, the central nervous system's absolute favorite molecule, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. We know it's essential for neuroplasticity.
It's everything. It's basically the survival and growth promoter for your neurons.
That's right. It helps form new connections, keeps the old ones healthy. But how does the physical act of, say, lifting a weight or going for a run tell the brain to actually make more of it?
That communication, that bridge, it relies entirely on those myokines we mentioned. These are tiny messengers that get released by your contracting muscle fiber.
And across the blood-brain barrier.
They do. They're the molecular bridge. And the sources really pull out 2 key players here, irisin and cathepsin B.
Irisin. That almost sounds like science fiction. What makes it so good at, kicking off brain growth?
It really is a remarkable thing. Irisin gets synthesized and released when your muscles are working, and the intensity of that work really matters. But the key part is that it can cross the blood-brain barrier. And once it's in the central nervous system, it acts like a direct signal, telling the brain to upregulate BDNF expression, specifically in the hippocampus.
So hippocampus of the learning and memory center of the brain.
Exactly.
So you exercise, irisin jumps that barrier, and then the hippocampus gets this powerful signal to grow and consolidate new information. That's a direct link from the gym to the classroom.
It is. And cathepsin B is its partner in this. Research shows that this other myokine not only enhances hippocampal function, but we can actually measure its levels in the blood, and they correlate directly with better scores on complex memory tests.
So it's not just theory. We can measure the compound and see the improved memory.
Exactly. We can link it directly to performance.
Now, beyond this direct signaling, the sources also talk about how exercise is like a systemic cleanup crew. It improves things that indirectly support the brain, mainly by tackling chronic inflammation.
And this systemic defense part is it's non-negotiable for brain longevity. We know that chronic neuroinflammation is a quiet killer. It's a hallmark of pretty much every neurodegenerative disease out there.
So what does exercise do about it?
It acts as a really potent natural anti-inflammatory. It consistently brings down the levels of these pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like TNF-alpha and IL-1 beta, all throughout the body. And on top of that, it boosts your body's own antioxidant capacity, so you're neutralizing free radicals before they can damage your neurons.
We hear a lot about cytokines, and one that always comes up is interleukin-6, IL-6. We know that chronically high levels are bad, but during exercise, it spikes like crazy. Why is that good for us?
That is a fascinating paradox, and context is just everything with IL-6. So if your IL-6 is chronically high because of, say, obesity or inactivity, it drives inflammation, it harms the brain, full stop. But the short, sharp spike you get during intense exercise, that's completely different. In that context, IL-6 acts as a metabolic sentinel. It's telling the brain about the body's energy needs right now and helps mobilize resources. That surge actually primes the brain, making it more receptive to BDNF and other growth factors right after your workout.
So it's a temporary signal that's preparing the system for adaptation and growth.
Precisely.
Okay, that sets the molecular stage perfectly. Let's get to the 3 specific flavors of fitness, starting with aerobic training, or AT. This is your continuous cardio, like a long run or a bike ride. It's often called the gold standard for memory and neurogenesis.
It is the foundation. Aerobic training, especially when you do it consistently over weeks and months, is the one that gives the most robust structural benefits to the brain. Because it's so steady, it provides this consistent, elevated flow of BDNF and irisin.
And what did that consistent flow actually do
Yeah.
structurally?
It translates into real, tangible growth. The research just consistently shows that sustained aerobic exercise leads to long-term increases in the volume of the hippocampus.
Well,
And that's not a small thing. Again, the hippocampus is ground zero for memory. So regular AT is really seen as the single most effective strategy we have to slow age-related cognitive decline. It directly fights that atrophy we normally see in the aging brain. It is the long game.
and speaking of the long game, there's this really interesting reevaluation of a byproduct of exercise that always had a terrible reputation. I'm talking about lactate.
Exactly. Lactate used to be completely demonized. It was just metabolic waste, the thing that made your muscles burn.
Right, the villain.
The villain, yes. But our understanding has totally flipped. We now know that the lactate produced during exercise is a critical signaling molecule, and it's even a preferred source of energy for neurons and astrocytes.
So it's not just waste, it's actually fuel.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's a signal. How does it help with neuroplasticity?
The production of lactate, especially during that moderate intensity activity, it directly stimulates neurogenesis. It tells the brain, I have energy and I am adapting. It enhances things like memory consolidation and executive processing, so that moderate intensity gives you the perfect combo, sustained BDNF plus this beneficial lactate signaling for growth.
Okay, so let's shift gears from the long, steady growth of AT to the quick hit. High intensity interval training. HIIT. This is a totally different approach. Short, intense bursts with brief recovery. What unique benefit does this style offer?
HIIT gives you what the researchers call an acute cognitive spike, and it's all driven by intensity. So while aerobic training gives you that sustained BDNF increase over time, HIIT causes this immediate and sometimes really dramatic surge in BDNF right after this.
Session, a bigger, faster release.
A faster, higher magnitude release, yes, compared to just moderate, continuous work.
So if you're facing a tough meeting or you need to be really sharp for a couple of hours, a quick HIIT session could be a tool for an immediate neural tune-up.
Absolutely. Those acute spikes are directly linked to immediate improvements in things like attention, working memory, and processing speed. It's a rapid tune-up. But here's where it gets really interesting for the long term, especially for older adults.
This is the finding that really stood out to me, the persistence of the benefits.
This is a profound aha moment. There's a specific study that tracked older adults from 65 to 85 years old. They did just 3 HI8 sessions a week for 6 months. The training itself significantly improved their hippocampal function, which is great.
But that's not the incredible part.
No, the incredible part is that the cognitive benefits were seen to persist for up to 5 years after they stopped the training.
5 years, from only 6 months of training 3 times a week. That suggests a really deep, durable change to the brain, not just a temporary effect.
It implies a true neural remodeling. And the sources also point out that HI8's effect on stress hormones, like the acute release and regulation of cortisol, that's also linked to these long-lasting improvements in the hippocampus. HIIT just forces the body and brain into this high-level adaptive state.
Okay, that transitions us perfectly to our third pillar, resistance training. RT, lifting weights, hallowed stuff. So we've got AT for neurogenesis, HIIT for the acute spike. What's the unique and crucial role that RT plays, especially when we're talking about helping people who are already showing some mild cognitive impairment?
Resistance training works through a very powerful systemic pathway. It's often indirect, but it's uniquely potent. So unlike aerobic training, which is focused on vascular factors and neurotrophins, RT's primary strength is its ability to dramatically improve the body's systemic health.
So things like insulin sensitivity, glucose metabolism.
Exactly. Insulin sensitivity and overall hormonal balance. By fixing the body's metabolic health, how well you process energy, RT is creating a much healthier, more stable environment for your neurons to live in.
That makes sense.
I mean, chronic poor metabolic function, like insulin resistance, is profoundly toxic to the brain. RT works to reverse that. It cultivates this favorable anti-inflammatory state that supports all the neurotrophic signaling over the long term. This metabolic stabilization is critical for maintaining brain volume and protecting against that slide into neurodegeneration.
And that leads us right to that crucial clinical trial, the one on women with mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. This finding is just vital for anyone worried about the precursors to dementia.
It's a cornerstone piece of research. The scientists did a head-to-head comparison. They took women with probable MCI and put them in one of two groups for 6 months. One group did twice-weekly progressive resistance training. The other did an outdoor walking program, so standard aerobic training.
And the results were completely different depending on the type of exercise.
Dramatically different. The progressive resistance training was uniquely successful. It resulted in a measurable reversal of cognitive decline in this group.
A reversal, not just slowing it down.
A reversal. And the specific things that improved were selective attention, conflict resolution, and associative memory. These are all executive functions, and they're all very strong predictors of whether someone will convert to dementia.
That is just a staggering outcome for something that isn't a drug.
It is. And here's the essential comparison for you listening. In that same trial, the outdoor walking group, the aerobic training, did not produce the same significant cognitive improvements in those areas for this MCI population.
So what does that suggest?
It suggests that once that metabolic vulnerability or early impairment is already there, the unique power of resistance training to boost executive function, probably by improving insulin signaling and metabolic health, becomes uniquely necessary.
This gives us 3 really distinct tailored tools. AT for structural growth and long-term memory, HIIT for that acute performance spike, and RT for executive function and actively intervening against cognitive decline. So how does someone put this all together? What does a synergistic approach look like?
Well, the biggest cognitive gains almost always come from a multimodal approach. You want the robust, sustained structural benefits you get from consistent aerobic training, but you really have to pair that with the favorable metabolic and hormonal environment that's built by resistance training.
So you're building and protecting at the same time.
You're building and protecting your neural architecture simultaneously.
And the sources also show we can amplify this by adding nutritional synergy, something we often forget when we talk about exercise.
Absolutely. There's specific evidence, especially in patients with MCI, that combining aerobic exercise with key omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, can help preserve gray matter volume in brain regions that are really vulnerable in diseases like Alzheimer's.
So exercise creates the demand for growth.
And nutrition provides the building blocks. It's a single feedback loop.
This really is the power of personalized application. We can stop just doing general exercise and start designing a specific plan targeted to our individual goals, whether that's reversing an early sign of impairment or just maximizing performance for school or work.
Exactly. Understanding these distinct mechanisms lets you choose your tool wisely. If your main concern is learning for an exam, maybe an acute HII session is your tool. If you're worried about those predictors of MCI, then regular progressive resistance training becomes the evidence-based priority. The goal determines the method.
This deep dive really makes it clear. Exercise isn't just one thing. The way you move determines the specific neural benefits you're going to get. BDNF and those myokines, they just respond completely differently to a long, steady run versus a heavy lifting session.
And, to leave you with a final thought, think about how you can constantly evolve your routine to really maximize this. We talked about the separate benefits, but researchers are finding ways to combine them in real time. There's this concept of dual task resistance exercise.
What's that?
It's performing resistance training while you're also engaged in a cognitive task. So maybe reciting a complex sequence or playing a word game in your head. And this has been shown to be superior to just standard resistance training for cognitive improvement in older people with impairment.
That's fascinating. So instead of just scrolling on your phone between sets,
you should be solving a puzzle or actively engaging in some mental challenge while you lift. Layering that cognitive demand onto the physical work, that's really the next frontier.
It's the ultimate integrated training.
It is. Find ways to challenge your body and your brain at the exact same moment to truly amplify that neural adaptation.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your sources and helping us dive deep into the specific science here. Now you have a precise, targeted blueprint for how to train both your body and your mind. Until next time, keep digging.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.